Imagine hearing someone knocking on your front door, but you're too afraid to answer, because the last family who opened their door was dead by the end of the week. This wasn't a legend. It wasn't a horror movie. It was medieval Europe, a time when people abandoned their own children. Priests refused to bury the dead, and entire cities disappeared into silence. No king could stop it. No army could fight it. No doctor understood it. Within just a few years, an invisible enemy wiped out nearly half of Europe's population. This was the Black Death, the plague that changed human history forever. Europe was already suffering. Years before the plague ever appeared, the harvests had failed. Food had become scarce. Families fought every day just to survive another winter. Children went to bed hungry. Many never woke up again. The streets of medieval cities were nothing like the clean roads we know today. Garbage was thrown outside the windows. Animals wandered freely through crowded marketplaces. Rats lived everywhere. Inside homes, inside food stores, even beneath people's beds. Nobody thought much about them. They were simply part of everyday life. Doctors knew almost nothing about disease. Many believed sickness came from poisonous air, or that it was God's punishment for human sins. No one imagined that thousands of tiny fleas hiding on ordinary rats were carrying one of the deadliest killers the world would ever see. Far to the east, death had already begun its journey, and Europe had no idea what was coming. It didn't arrive with an army. It didn't come with warning. It arrived on ships. Somewhere in the vast trading routes of Asia, the plague had already begun spreading from town to town. Merchants continued their journeys, completely unaware that an invisible killer was traveling with them. The disease moved silently along the Silk Road, crossing deserts, mountains, and kingdoms. Then, in 1347, several merchant ships sailed into the port of Messina, Sicily. At first, everything looked normal. But when people boarded the ships, they were met with a nightmare. Many sailors were already dead. Those still alive were burning with fever, coughing blood, and covered with strange black swellings. They begged for help, but nobody could save them. The ships were ordered to leave the harbor immediately, yet the real danger had already escaped. Hidden below the decks were hundreds of rats. Clinging to those rats were tiny infected fleas carrying the deadly plague bacteria. As the rats scattered through the port, the fleas found new hosts. Within days, people began falling sick. Within weeks, entire towns were infected. And before anyone understood what was happening, death was racing across Europe faster than anyone had ever imagined. At first, it felt like an ordinary fever, a headache, a sore throat, a little weakness. Most people believed they would recover within a few days. They never did. Soon, painful swellings the size of apples appeared beneath the arms, around the neck, and in the groin. These dark, infected lumps, known as buboes, became so painful that even the slightest movement felt unbearable. The fever kept rising. Victims began vomiting. Some coughed up blood. Others developed black patches across their skin as their organs slowly failed. For many, death came within just 3 to 5 days. The plague spread so quickly that families often watched one loved one die, only to see another fall sick the very next morning. Fear soon destroyed the bonds between people. Parents abandoned their own children. Neighbors locked their doors. Even priests became afraid to visit the dying. Across Europe, strange figures dressed in long black robes and wearing beaked masks walked through the streets. These were the famous plague doctors. They believed the disease traveled through poisoned air, so they filled their masks with herbs, flowers, and spices, hoping the sweet smell would protect them. But nothing worked. The plague didn't care whether you were rich or poor, a king or a beggar, young or old. When death entered your home, no one knew who would be next. As the plague spread from city to city, Europe stopped feeling like a civilization. It became a continent of fear. Entire villages disappeared almost overnight. In some towns, so many people died that there was no one left to bury the bodies. Corpses were left inside homes, lying in the streets, or piled into enormous mass graves without names, prayers, or proper funerals. The sound of church bells never seemed to stop. Day after day, funeral after funeral, until even the priests began dying. People searched desperately for answers. Many believed the plague was God's punishment for humanity's sins. Others blamed outsiders, strangers, and innocent communities, believing someone must have caused this nightmare. Fear turned ordinary people against one another. Trade collapsed. Markets closed. Fields were abandoned. Food became scarce once again, while thousands of businesses simply disappeared. For the first time in centuries, Europe's kings discovered something terrifying. Their armies could defeat enemy kingdoms, but they were completely powerless against an invisible disease. No castle wall could keep it out. No sword could kill it. No amount of wealth could buy protection. The Black Death had done what no invading army ever could. It had brought an entire continent to its knees. But when the nightmare finally began to fade, Europe would never be the same again. When the worst of the plague finally passed, Europe was almost unrecognizable. Historians estimate that between 25 and 50 million people had died. In some regions, nearly half the population had disappeared. Entire villages were left empty. Fields remained untouched. Homes stood abandoned for years. But out of unimaginable tragedy, something unexpected began to happen. With so many workers gone, labor became more valuable than ever before. Farmers, craftsmen, and ordinary laborers could now demand better wages and greater freedom. For centuries, powerful landowners had controlled almost every aspect of people's lives. Now, that balance of power began to change. The old feudal systems slowly weakened, while towns and cities started to grow once again. The Black Death also changed the way people thought about medicine. Blind faith and superstition were no longer enough. Over time, people began searching for real explanations, laying the foundations for future medical discoveries and scientific thinking. The plague had taken millions of lives, but it had also transformed Europe forever. Sometimes, the greatest changes in history are born from humanity's darkest moments. The Black Death ended centuries ago, but its shadow never truly disappeared. It reminded humanity of one terrifying truth. No empire is too powerful, no king is untouchable, and no civilization is invincible. An invisible enemy brought Europe to its knees. Not with swords, not with armies, but with fear. The Black Death wasn't just one of history's deadliest pandemics. It became one of history's greatest turning points, changing medicine, society, and the future of the modern world forever. And perhaps the most frightening lesson of all, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it always has something to teach us. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, subscribe to Midnight History, because every civilization, every empire, and every forgotten story still has something to say.